Hello, everybody, and welcome to Shadow at Night for the first time in a week. It's Friday, October the 18th, 2024. Yes, I've been away. I have missed you as well, so thank you for being here tonight. It's very much appreciated. Also, I want to thank you for the support and patience that you've given me in the past week. Yeah, I got nailed with something. Last Thursday, I kind of felt kind of going to bed that night, and then Friday morning I woke up with it, which is fantastic all through the long weekend and then the early part of this week. Actually, most of this week. As you know, I finally posted a video yesterday. Finally got out of the house for the first time in about a week yesterday, and here I am tonight. So tonight's show will be kind of a fill in the blank show and the week that was. So things that I've missed over the past week plus, and things that have happened that everybody has been talking about this week. I want to give you my take on them, obviously. Trudeau at the Foreign Interference Commission on Wednesday, he testified and lied through his teeth. And the reason that he did was because he knew that nobody would ever be able to call him on it by showing proof because of the classified nature of these documents that he alleges conservative MPs are named in being a part of the foreign interference conspiracy that's been sweeping Canada for the past 20 or 25 years. So we're going to get into all of that in just a second. The Shadow at Night live stream is brought to you by CanadaNanoSilver.com. That is CanadaNanoSilver.com. Hey, they will be at the Saskatoon Wellness Expo next weekend, Kevin and Anna will. That's going to be, let's see here. It's going to be at Prairieland Park. It runs on Saturday and Sunday from 10 to 6 on Saturday and 10 to 5 on Sunday. They're in booth 38, and they would love for you to come by and say hello if you're in the Saskatoon area. CanadaNanoSilver.com will be at the Saskatoon Wellness Expo next weekend. This is a product I've been using a lot of in the past week, the silver lozenges. When you've got a sore, itchy throat, or you feel like you've been gargling razor blades, reach for Silver Biotics lozenges with vitamin C to quickly cool and soothe your sore throat with an added boost of support for your immune system. It comes in Manuka honey, plain old honey, vitamin C, and elderberry zinc. Get yours at CanadaNanoSilver.com. That again is CanadaNanoSilver.com. If you're looking for a retail location near you, you can find one right here on the retail locations tab. There are over 30 to choose from all across the country in Alberta, BC, Manitoba, Newfoundland, Ontario, Quebec, and Saskatchewan. And if you would like to be a retailer of these awesome products yourself, maybe make a little extra cash on the side, get a hold of Kevin and Anna through the contact tab at CanadaNanoSilver.com. Again, that is CanadaNanoSilver.com. All right, who's here tonight? I know that I've been away, and some of you probably didn't get notifications for the show tonight because thank you very much to the Censor Goblins on Facebook and YouTube. So who's here? Sherry is watching tonight from Edmonton. Hello, Sherry. Yes, I'm happy to be back too. Christina is watching tonight from Belleville, I think it was, before you flew by the screen so quickly. Severa is watching tonight. Mimi is in Austinfeld watching tonight. Bren is on Facebook watching from Cambridge. Hello, Muriel watching in Newfoundland. Janet's watching tonight. Karen, hello. Neil, sorry, that's Nell watching I don't know where you're watching from, Nell, but I do see her on Facebook. Who's watching on YouTube tonight? Is there anybody watching on YouTube? I haven't had any censorship problems on YouTube in the last week or so. Then again, I haven't been on, but Facebook has been kind of a problem. Anybody watching on X tonight? Oh, Karen's watching on YouTube. Hello, Karen. Thank you for saying that. I really appreciate it. And for those of you who are watching wherever, on whatever platform, like and share. Get this out to as many people as we possibly can. It really helps this show get out there, and it really helps me because, you know, you do make a little bit of money from social media, the more people you reach. So get this out, like I say, guys, to as many people as we possibly can. I am very thankful for that. All right. One more thing I wanted to mention before we get into the material we have for tonight's show, and that is the National Citizens Inquiry is back in action. They've been doing hearings today. They did some yesterday, and they'll have some tomorrow in Vancouver. So if you're in the Vancouver area, go to nationalcitizensinquiry.ca to find out where you can go to see it live. And of course, you can go to nationalcitizensinquiry.ca to watch the hearings live. I believe they are on Rumble and on X. So check out the National Citizens Inquiry. The opening witness, The opening witness they had on Thursday morning is a woman I would love to have on the show. She was talking about the child sex trade that runs through Canada, specifically British Columbia. It was hair-raising and alarming and eye-opening all at the same time. All right, Justin Trudeau at the Foreign Interference Committee hearings on Wednesday. And here is a snippet of what he said. And of course, the rebuttal from the Conservative lawyer. Let's have a watch.
Because I am Prime Minister and privy to all these informations, I have the names of a number of parliamentarians, former parliamentarians and or candidates in the Conservative Party of Canada who are engaged or at high risk of, or for whom there is clear intelligence around foreign interference. And I have directed CSIS and others to try and inform the Conservative Party leader to be warned and armed to be able to make decisions that protect the integrity of that party, of its members, from attempts at foreign activities around foreign interference. And the decision by the leader of the Conservative Party to not get those classified briefings means that nobody in his party, not him, and nobody in a position of power knows the names of these individuals and can take appropriate action.
So, Mr. De Luca for the Conservative Party.
You leveled some criticism and professed bewilderment at the leader of the CPC this morning not agreeing to receive a security clearance. Is that correct?
Yes.
Am I correct, sir, that Mr. Poilievre has said that the reason he does not wish to receive the security clearance is because he does not want to be constrained in terms of the use he can make of the information that he would receive?
Okay, so before I continue, the next 10 seconds, if you haven't seen them, we're going to make you laugh.
I don't believe that was his argument. I believe his argument was that he wouldn't be able to talk about the information he received.
How is that different than what I just said?
Because as leader of a political party, you have many, many tools at your disposal.
Okay, so listen to what he says here regarding the many tools as a party leader that you have at your disposal.
To act on information you receive. You can choose to not sign the nomination of a candidate who is under a cloud of suspicion. You can choose to not elevate them to a critic's position. You can choose to not promise to make them a minister one day. You can you can choose which committees they sit on.
So if you've got an MP in your party, in your caucus, who is suspected of being involved in foreign interference, you can leave them off committee. You cannot make them a cabinet minister. You don't have to sign their nomination papers. Can you remove them from caucus? Yes, of course you can. But watch what else he says here.
A leader of a party has many, many tools that they can use that are not requiring him to speak publicly about his knowledge. The leader of a party has quite a bit of power over what happens within that party. And that's why the ultimate decision maker in a political party should always be the leader.
Trudeau just said that the party leader pretty much makes up his or her mind on who runs in what riding. I thought there was supposed to be fair and open riding nominations for every party. So that riding, the members of that riding, of that party and that riding, can go ahead and decide by a vote who gets to run. I understand if there's a cloud of suspicion surrounding that person, you'd rather not have them run. That's obvious. But what he also said there was, there's a number of things you can do without actually saying anything to anybody about why. Don't you think that if your MP was somehow ejected from caucus or not given a cabinet position or something other that Trudeau said, you'd be wondering, hey, what the heck's going on with this MP here? If you're politically minded, of course, people like us. Why did you get removed from caucus? I can't talk about it. Trudeau won't talk about it. I can't talk about it. Wouldn't that be a dead giveaway? Hey, maybe this guy's involved in Chinese or Indian or Pakistani or Iranian foreign interference. Don't you think it would be a dead giveaway? Let's continue.
Are you aware that there are other security cleared individuals within the CPC that can and do receive regular security briefings?
I think you're speaking of Ian Todd, the Chief of Staff.
Among others, yes.
I can't help but imagining how people would react if I sort of sat back and said, well, no, Katie Telford got cleared on this information. She made a determination about who could run for me or not, and I don't need to worry about that sort of stuff. Canadians didn't elect, or Conservative Party members didn't select Mr. Todd to make decisions about who could run for the Conservative Party of Canada. They expect Mr. Poilievre to take those decisions, but he has decided that he doesn't want to take those decisions.
Sir, just over the lunch break, and you didn't mention Mr. Todd at all in the bombshell disclosure that you made today, but just over the lunch break, in light of that, in response to your news this morning that you were aware of a number of CPC parliamentarians and former parliamentarians that are at risk of being compromised by foreign interference, Mr. Todd has advised that he has received a number of top secret briefings from the security establishment, and in none of these briefings has the name of any Conservative parliamentarian or candidate, past or present, been brought to the attention of Mr. Todd. Why is that?
You'd have to ask CSIS for that, but my supposition is that Mr. Todd is not the one who is responsible for determining what candidates can run or not for the Conservative Party of Canada.
All right, that's a completely wild supposition, and here's why. Because Ian Todd is Pierre Poilievre's chief of staff. Everything runs through Ian Todd, right? So if Ian Todd had access and has access, he does have access to these secret documents. He could just look on the documents and go, oh, we've got a problem here. A couple of our MPs, former MPs, maybe future MPs, they're involved in this foreign interference. So then he goes to Pierre Poilievre and he says, Pierre, and because these guys also have great relationships. If you're the leader of a party, you don't hire somebody who you don't like, who is below grade, to be your chief of staff. You want the best of the best of the best, and you want to know that person. You want to have a good synergy, a good working relationship. You know, he finishes your sentences, that kind of a thing, right? So knowing that, would Ian Todd be able to go to Pierre Poilievre and say, Pierre, I know you don't want to do this, but I just saw some very disturbing things on these secret documents. Because he's got the same clearance as all of the other MPs. Well, he's not an MP, he's a chief of staff. But Katie Telford, that's Trudeau's chief of staff. She's got clearance too. He's got the same clearance that she has. And so if he saw these names, he could go to Poilievre and say, we've got a problem. You have to go and get this clearance, so that you know what you can do with these people. And further to all of this, if these people are involved in a criminal conspiracy, knowingly or unwittingly, with a foreign power who's trying to interfere in our politics, interfere in our basic Canadian structures of things, that's criminal offense. That's nothing to do with the party whatsoever. Wouldn't you think the RCMP would be in there arresting people if this were that bad? Regardless of whether or not they're politicians for a certain party, it doesn't matter. What matters is if they've done something bad enough, then the RCMP should be at least questioning these people. But so far, nothing. Let's continue.
It would be the leader, and much of the information that is handed out to various individuals with security clearances is determined on their need-to-know basis.
You indicated today, as I indicated earlier, in a very public forum and in a very public manner, your knowledge of the names of CPC parliamentarians and the risk that they risk being compromised by foreign interference. Am I correct, sir, that one way that you could arrange for those threats to be mitigated is through the use of threat reduction measures under Section 12.1 of the CSIS Act?
Threat reduction measures are tools that CSIS has used regularly in many cases regarding different parliamentarians, and it is very possible that a number of those parliamentarians will have had visits from CSIS and either defensive briefings or others to try and mitigate the risks that they are going through. That is different from a leader choosing to willfully remain ignorant of very serious contentions, including by the NSICOP, that the leadership race that elevated him to leader was compromised by foreign interference.
And if the tool of the TRMs were used, you couldn't use the Leader of the Opposition's reluctance to obtain security clearance as an excuse not to provide that information to the CPC. Isn't that correct?
I'm sorry, I'm not following. Can you rephrase the question?
Sure. If someone wanted to get this information, this information about the names of the parliamentarians, for example, because of some imminent threat to the leader of the CPC, TRMs could be used, and in that event, it wouldn't be necessary for the leader of the CPC to obtain security clearance.
No, you're entirely wrong on that. If you were to know that a certain candidate had a high degree of exposure to foreign interference and vulnerability, either witting or unwitting, giving a threat reduction measure to that candidate would not necessarily, and quite frankly, in my experience, highly unlikely to have the candidate spontaneously decide to step down as either a candidate or a member of parliament and not run in the next election. That is a determination that only a leader can make, looking at the vulnerabilities of that candidate, looking at the behavior, and to use the words of the NSIA, potentially poor judgment or inappropriate behavior or untrustworthiness. Those are the kinds of things that only a leader can actually ensure for the team that they're building, and potentially future ministerial elevations that would then have to run into a security clearance process that would stop them like a brick wall. Knowing that as a leader, as you are hoping to become Prime Minister of this country, would seem to be a very basic bar to hit if you want to take national security seriously.
But the underlying premise of that answer you just gave is that the TRM can only be directed at the person affected and not the leader of the opposition. Isn't that correct? The TRM could be directed to Mr. Poilievre.
The identities of the people involved are themselves classified and available to only those with top secret clearances. So certainly CSIS could go to the leader of the opposition and say, you really have to be careful to instruct all of your MPs to stay away from this country, or to be concerned about diplomats from that country, or not accept money, or not accept support from these particular diplomats. But the TRM would be unable to identify which of those individuals are in question unless the leader chose to get a security clearance to be able to hear those names. And the fact that the leader does not leaves him in a position of being unable to protect the integrity of his party.
I'm going to suggest that you're wrong on your understanding of the law as to what a TRM can and can't do and who it can be directed to. And I'm going to suggest that the fact that you leveled this accusation earlier today and didn't mention the possibility of a TRM was just for the purpose of grandstanding here today.
On the contrary, threat reduction measures are regularly used to highlight to people potential vulnerabilities. But having watched many, having known a number of parliamentarians who went through TRMs, they often come out of TRMs with a general sense of having to be more careful. But specifics are often not given, and there is no guarantee that a TRM to the leader of the party would include the names of the people most at risk or most engaged in potentially problematic activity. And that's why the refusal of the leader to actually access the intelligence on those names is, as I said, bewildering.
Do you agree that often when CSIS or some other security agency shares classified information, the recipient is severely constrained in what he or she can do with that information?
Yes.
Okay. And in fact, your own chief of staff yesterday gave evidence that the recipient of that information would not be able to use that information in any manner. Do you agree with that?
No, I disagree, because
Just threw his chief of staff under the bus.
the party leader can choose to not allow someone to run for them for any number of reasons, knowing in the back of your mind that this is the real reason, but giving it as an example, I'd actually prefer to have this other person run instead.
So what he's saying here is he's going to lie to people about the real reason a person has been withdrawn from running in their riding for his party, and he's going to make something up, or he's not going to say anything at all. I know we've covered that, but that's essentially what Trudeau is saying here.
Or you had sketchy business dealings in the past. That means we're not going to go with you. There are all sorts of reasons that do not prove injurious to national security. The leader has a level of power over who runs and what roles they have that doesn't require them to explain themselves. So
Doesn't require them to explain themselves. I don't have to tell you crap. I don't have to tell you jack squat about anything. Now, I'd like to take a moment here to try to figure out exactly why it's so important to our national security that these names remain hidden. Or is it of import to the people who are involved, the names, these 11 or 12 individuals who knowingly or unwittingly have been working with some kind of a foreign power to, undermine our government? Could it be for their own personal safety? Do they think that somebody in a fit of pique is going to attack one of these MPs as a traitor, physically attack them? Maybe. Far-fetched, but maybe. Their identities will be destroyed. Everything they've worked for in their entire lives will be gone. Well, if you're a traitor to your own country, I would say that's a fitting punishment, wouldn't you? They do it in the United States. They did it with the mayor of New York. The mayor of New York got outed for apparently working with, was it Turkish officials? Or some country in the Middle East, apparently he's working secretly with, and they named him. They named him immediately. Eric Adams, that's his name, the mayor of New York. And he's still alive. He's still kicking. He was at that dinner that Trump was at last night, that Catholic dinner. But in Canada, shh, quiet. Now, what's the declassification process in Canada? I've been stumped on that all week long. I've been looking and looking. I had nothing better to do. So I've been looking and looking. How can we declassify documents in Canada? Is it even possible to declassify documents in Canada? First thing, this from the CBC. Why doesn't the government release the names? All right, so let's see what their answer is. Let's see if it's satisfactory for us. Poilievre and the Conservatives have been calling on Trudeau to release the names of allegedly compromised parliamentarians. They repeated that demand a couple days ago. But law enforcement and national security agencies have been clear on this point. Sharing any classified information is a crime. Anyone who reveals classified information is subject to the law equally and obviously. In this case, those names are classified at this time, and to reveal them publicly would be a criminal offense. RCMP Deputy Commissioner Mark Flynn told MPs on the Public Accounts Committee in June. When CBC News later asked Flynn whether the names could be released in the House of Commons, where MPs can enjoy certain legal protections, he suggested that could be a legal gray area. That's a question that should be asked due to complexities of parliamentary privilege, legal expert, blah, 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 blah. All right. So what have I found out? But before I get into that, Poilievre did respond, although he hasn't responded via video this week, which I find odd because normally he would have. Maybe he's on a vacation with his family or something. I know his wife celebrated a birthday a couple of days ago, so it could be that he was having family time and didn't want to be interrupted. He did release a written statement, though. Here's a story that comes from the deepdive.ca. Poilievre to Trudeau released names of MPs allegedly involved in foreign interference. Okay, so why would Poilievre's not an idiot, right? So for him to tell Trudeau, release the names, would mean that he's asking Trudeau to break the law, unless it's not really breaking the law. But we'll get into that. Pierre Poilievre has escalated his demand for Justin Trudeau to release the names, blah, blah, blah. This comes amid heightened concerns over foreign influence. Oh, and by the way, just so you guys know, in case you didn't, that this is all about Trudeau subterfuge, trying to avoid this cabinet or this caucus mutiny that he's got coming up next week. That's all this is. It has nothing to do with anything else. This foreign interference thing has been on the table in Canada for at least 2 years. At least 2 years. And he's done nothing about it until now. I wonder why. And as an additional bonus for Trudeau, he's trying to somehow make Poilievre the bad guy here. And all Poilievre wants to do, seriously, is be able to talk to the Canadian people about who's involved here and what should be done about it. Really, that's it. That's why he doesn't want to get the clearance, because he doesn't want to be gagged by the NDA that he would have to sign if he did see these documents. It's ridiculous. So here's what Poilievre said. My message to Justin Trudeau is release the names of all MPs that have collaborated with foreign interference. But he won't, because Justin Trudeau is doing what he always does. He is lying. He is lying to distract from a Liberal caucus revolt against his leadership and revelations he knowingly allowed Beijing to interfere and help him win 2 elections. The full letter is right here on X. The allegations Poilievre references have deep roots, particularly concerning China's potential involvement in Canadian politics. The controversy gained momentum in 2023, with CSIS revealing that they had been monitoring potential interference by Chinese government officials in Canadian electoral processes. Also, by the way, Trudeau decided, excuse me, that he wanted to take on the 4th largest military in the world, India, and expel some of their diplomats. And so naturally, Canadian diplomats in India had to be expelled as well. And the whole problem there, the Khalistanis versus the Indians, has been brought to Canada by Trudeau because of his failed immigration policies for the past 10 years. So we've got so many Indians, and when I say Indians, I mean Indians from the Middle East, who are here now in Canada, and they have taken over pretty much, at least a good portion of it, our political system and a lot of our culture. So their fight is now our fight, and it's spilling out into Canadian streets. And that's because of Justin freaking Trudeau and his open border policy. Sorry, the World Economic Forum open border policy. We're not going to get into the hand-dong stuff and all of that. Needless to say, Poilievre did shoot back at Trudeau regarding these allegations. And, you know, when you're testifying, when you're on the stand testifying at a commission, you don't want to be partisan. This is about, apparently anyway, this is about national security. This is about what's in Canada's best interests. But instead, what he did was start taking shots at Pierre Poilievre. Also, Jagmeet Singh is doing the exact same thing. If you have an account on Twitter, you would know this by now. So he is marching in lockstep right now with Justin Trudeau's attack Poilievre on foreign interference stance. I thought that agreement had been ripped up. Canadian politics is getting very interesting, my friends, and I do believe in the next week to 10 days, there's either going to be a proroguement of Parliament by Justin Trudeau himself, based upon how many of his MPs in his own caucus are actually revolting against him. We have numbers anywhere between 20 and 30 who've signed this alleged piece of paper, this pledge to ask Trudeau to step down as leader of the party. But we don't know how that's going to play out. We do hear that all of these MPs will speak publicly together at some point next week. Anyway, getting back to the classification or declassification process in Canada, can it be done? Our friend Jeff Stone of Tacit Investigations and Security is writing a book, and in the research that he did, he was looking through the white papers of the Privy Council of Canada. And here's what he came up with. In Canada, the authority to declassify secret documents typically resides within the government agencies or departments that originally classified the information. However, ultimate responsibility for the declassification of sensitive national security information generally falls under, number one, the Privy Council office. The PCO assists the Prime Minister and the government in ensuring that sensitive and classified information is handled appropriately. Excuse me. And it plays a significant role in decisions related to national security. Number two, ministers of relevant departments, each department or agency with the authority to classify information like the Department of National Defense, Global Affairs Canada, or CSIS, can also declassify documents. The relevant minister or their delegated senior officials have the power to make such decisions. And number three, the Prime Minister. As the head of the executive branch, the Prime Minister has overarching authority, particularly for high-level documents relating to national security or classified under the Canada Evidence Act. Then number four, they say the CSIS and all declassification must comply with Canadian laws, such as the Security of Information Act and regulations surrounding national security. So how this would work, it wouldn't be a direct thing that Trudeau can just say, okay, the documents are declassified. He would have to ask or suggest to the people who classified them in the first place that he would like these documents declassified. It's kind of like how they make Senate appointments, right? On the advice of the Prime Minister, the Governor General appoints so-and-so to the office of Senator, blah, 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 blah. So, and it's the same thing as well when they have to pick a new Governor General. The King is the only person who can appoint the Governor General on the advice of the Prime Minister. So everything is about the advice of the Prime Minister. Everything is about the advice of the Prime Minister. So if Trudeau advised CSIS to declassify these documents, then he could. Because if these documents remain classified as they are, and Poilievre does get the clearance to go ahead and look at them, he could never say anything about them without possibly going to prison. Yes, prison. Look, here's Elizabeth May looking drunk and talking about that very thing.
He has his reasons, right? He doesn't want to be gagged.
Well, you're not gagged. As you can see, I'm careful, but not gagged.
Well, you're not gagged. You're careful, but not gagged. Again, please, Liz.
Well, you're not gagged. As you can see, I'm careful, but not gagged.
Did you read anything in that report?
To answer that might be revealing more than I'm prepared to reveal.
To answer that would be revealing more than I'm prepared to reveal, which means you can't say anything. Which is the whole reason that Poilievre does not want to sign this non-disclosure. Because once he does, he can't tell us. And we, the people, deserve to know, especially heading into a federal election. Or do we have to rely upon the goodwill of the leaders of the parties to say, this person is not going to run for my party because he's a foreign spy? It's preposterous. It's preposterous. So, and what can we do about it? Nothing. Nothing. Not at this point. Unless we put so much pressure on the Liberals, and they're already in complete disarray anyway. Unless we put so much pressure on that Liberal Party to go ahead and pressure Trudeau to reveal the names. But he won't. He won't, because he'd have to reveal all the names, and some of them, most of them, probably all of them, are Liberals. Because Poilievre said that there are no Conservative MPs, past or present, or candidates who are on that list. He would have heard about it. And that would have come from Ian Todd, his chief of staff, who does have the clearance to look at these documents. CBC president acknowledges growing support to defund the state broadcaster in an internal email. This story comes from tnc.news. Catherine Tate, she's the CEO of the CBC. She's testified at committee in the last couple of times in the last year, and she's been awful and arrogant and condescending. Acknowledged that, that the state broadcaster is poised to have its funding cut in the near future as the defund narrative has picked up some momentum, according to an internal email she sent out earlier this year. Tate's email was sent out in January requesting that 2 staff members volunteer for a committee being organized by the Heritage Minister to help create a government plan for CBC Radio Canada. The email was later obtained by the National Post through an access to information request. However, its 2 recipients' names were redacted. Tate said their participation was critical to the issues on the table. Sadly, she says, the defund narrative has picked up momentum, especially as it relates to CBC television. I believe the industry must rally if we're to secure Canadian-owned production for the future, Tate wrote. The email went on to say that 2025 would be a big year for the industry. True North contacted CBC for further information, and they said we won't comment on private internal correspondence. So the CBC is definitely in trouble, and you can tell from some of their reporting lately, it's been absolutely abominable. Marie-Claude Bibeau, more bad news for Trudeau. Carla Qualtrough, Philomena Tassi, and Dan Vandal. He's a Winnipeg Liberal from the St. Boniface riding, I believe. They've informed the Prime Minister they won't be running in the next federal election. They were all elected in the 2015. Ministers Bibeau and Qualtrough have held ministerial positions since then. Bibeau is considering a run for mayor of Sherbrooke, scheduled for fall of next year. The 4 ministers will be removed from cabinet in a cabinet shuffle scheduled for the coming weeks, sources told Radio Canada. They're going to do a cabinet shuffle? That's absolutely preposterous. Why would they bother if they're going to prorogue Parliament? I mean, Trudeau is going to fall. One way or another, something big is coming. I would be so amazed if something huge doesn't happen in Canadian politics in the next week and a half. This, as we have all that nonsense going on in the United States. What are we, 18 days out from their election? We've got some stuff on that coming up for you in just a second. Here's another story from TNC. The CRA, the Canada Revenue Agency, has fired 330 employees for illegitimately taking CERB payments. These are people who work for Canada Revenue, our tax agency. These people are the ones who are supposed to be watchdogging Canadians. But who watches the watchman? The CRA terminated 330 employees for inappropriately receiving CERB during the COVID-19 pandemic response after completing its final internal review on the matter, which, by the way, started in June of last year, which is preposterous that it's taken this long. The inquiry ultimately led to as many as 600 employees being investigated starting in July 2024 for individuals who have not responded or cooperated and who have been determined to have the financial capacity to pay. Legal warnings will be issued and legal measures could be taken to recover monies owed, wrote the CRA in a statement released in June. According to the agency, only people who have already been contacted about repaying their debt are the ones who should be worried. Legal measures are only taken when there is no cooperation from an individual with the ability to repay the debt. The firings come after the Trudeau government called for the CRA to begin automatically filing Canadians' taxes in 2024, an idea it first announced as part of their 2020 budget speech. The Liberals claim the proposed change would help Canadians deal with the cost of living. What? How is that related? A pilot program was announced again in the federal. These people, I just don't know how they can spout such gobbledygook and expect us to sit back and go, oh, okay, I got it. I totally understand what you're saying, Mr. Trudeau. I get it. Don't worry about it. You know, I think we may have before all the nonsense started 4 or 5 years ago, but since then, so many people have woken up and we're now asking questions. We're now actually paying attention to the BS that they spout. which is absolutely outstanding. This is called the Great Awakening, and I certainly hope it continues. And that's why I ask you guys to like and share and get this show out to as many people as you possibly can, because there's people out there still who are going, I know there's something wrong, but I just don't know what it is. If only I had some kind of a source for information. But I don't, so I'll go back to living in the Matrix for a while. And then maybe they never come back out. The pilot program was announced again in the federal government's 2023 to 2024 fiscal budget as part of its goal of making life more affordable for Canadians. However, the Canadian Taxpayers Federation pushed back on that initiative. In a video posted to social media, the organization asked, do you trust the federal government with your wallet? Look at Trudeau there. He just looks crazy. Do you trust the federal government with your wallet? The CRA's job is to squeeze every penny from you, not maximize your refund, said the CTF. And let's not forget, this government is broke because they've been spending. This is a great story we got last week or earlier this week. Colin McDonald, who's been on the show, and I would love to have Colin back on next week. He's a really good guy. He was one of the organizers of rallies, I believe, in the Niagara area during the pandemic response, during the lockdowns. And he was convicted a few months ago. And now his case has been appealed. And guess what? He won. Cullen McDonald, charged with common nuisance, which is their fallback charge. They've got nothing else. You're a common nuisance. For peacefully protesting, wins appeal. There's Colin there. Cullen McDonald has won his case. It's all over social media, but why should we care? Well, our friend Dave Freedom said this is probably, or was probably, the most important case in Canadian law in recent memory. And the reason for that is because if Cullen remained guilty of doing what he did, we wouldn't be able to go out and protest about anything ever, if the government decided they didn't agree with what we were protesting. And when do governments ever agree with that? Well, we should, and here's why. Cullen became a test case for Canada. While similar cases were being dismissed across the country, Cullen's case was pushed forward by prosecutors in hopes of setting a precedent for future cases pitting public health orders against our charter rights. Criminal lawyer Saran Gebreselassie stated, I butchered that so bad. I'm sorry, Saran. If you're watching right now, you're probably not, but if you are, I'm so sorry. Maybe I'll get you on and you can tell us how to pronounce it. Anyway, the criminal lawyer stated, in all of my years practicing law, I have never seen a case that has the potential to cause more damage to rights and freedoms in Canada than the case of His Majesty the King versus McDonald. That, I can't stand Crown land. I can't stand Crown attorney. It needs to be that we get away from this Crown stuff already, but that's a whole other thing. Mr. McDonald was charged with 3 counts of common nuisance. The default charge for, they say it too, the default charge for anyone who dared protest public health mandates, 2 charges for attending a protest in Niagara, and a 3rd for attending a protest in St. Catharines. His charges from Niagara were acquitted by Justice Richard Blouin, who concluded that elevating a violation of provincial health orders to a criminal offense would set a dangerous precedent, as it would allow every infraction of public health measures to be treated as a criminal offense rather than just a provincial violation. A few weeks later, a few towns over, the charge from St. Catharines produced a verdict in direct opposition to the previous, despite being nearly identical cases. Justice De Philippe, believing Cullen held a higher level of responsibility as one of the organizers of the protest, levied a guilty verdict against him, leaving him with a criminal record and a fine of $4,000. Cullen appealed his guilty verdict, while the Crown prosecutor, and this name is so ironic, Michael Lucifora, appealed both acquittals and the sentencing of his guilty verdict, believing 1 year in jail would be more suitable than simply paying a fine and a victim surcharge. In a show of true Canadian justice, the appeal court's decision not only dismissed the Crown's appeals of Mr. McDonald's acquittals, but the judgment also overturned the original guilty verdict. Cullen is now a free man. The potential impacts to all Canadians, had this case been lost, are truly sobering. At stake were the very rights and freedoms we've all believed were there to protect us from tyrannical government, overreach, our freedom of conscience and religion, freedom of thought, belief, opinion, and expression, our freedom of peaceful assembly, and our freedom of association. Had the Crown won their case, police would be free to arbitrarily arrest anyone violating a bylaw in the name of public safety and with no regard for their rights. Make no mistake, Colin McDonald's win is a win for all of Canada. We now have a precedent validating the rightful position of our Charter of Rights and Freedoms within the context of the pandemic and associated public health measures. All Canadians should be celebrating this victory. We thank him for his hard work and determination and applaud all who supported and promoted his case. Cullen firmly believes that without the show of support from Canadians, his case may have been lost. Like so many others, we all stand together for the rights and freedoms of Canadians. So this is Brett Baer. He interviewed Kamala Harris on Fox News the other night, and here is a piece of that interview.
Nungary, Rachel Morin, Laken Riley, they are young women who were brutally assaulted and killed by some of the men who were released at the beginning of the administration, well before a negotiated bipartisan bill. Former President Clinton actually referred to Laken Riley Sunday campaigning for you in Georgia, saying if those men had been properly vetted, Laken Riley probably would not have been killed. So if it wouldn't have happened, this is well before any negotiation. This is well before Donald Trump got involved in the politics. This is a specific policy decision by your administration to release these men into the country. So what I'm saying to you, do you owe
Brett,
those families an apology?
Let me just say, first of all, those are tragic cases. There's no question about that. There is no question about that. And I can't imagine the pain that the families of those victims have experienced for a loss that should not have occurred. So that is true. It is also true that if a border security had actually been passed 9 months ago, it would be 9 months that we would have had more border agents at the border, more support for the folks who are working around the clock trying to hold it all together.
Madam Vice President.
To ensure that no future harm would occur. And this election in 20 days will determine whether we have a president of the United States who actually cares more about fixing a problem, even if it is not to their political advantage in an election, because there was a solution, Brett.
Madam Vice President, it was a policy decision in the early part of your administration. I will let one of the mothers talk about it. Take a listen.
Because of the Biden-Harris administration open border policies catch and release, they were enrolled in the Alternatives to Detention program. This meant that they were released into the United States. It was not even a full 3 weeks later that they would take my daughter, Jocelyn Nungare's life. I believe the Biden-Harris administration open border policies are responsible for the death of my daughter.
That's the early days. So do you owe them an apology is what I'm saying.
I will tell you that I am so sorry for her loss. I am so sorry for her loss. Sincerely.
After the interview, and believe it or not, if you didn't see it, there were absolutely more hilarious and egregious clips. The entire interview lasted about 28 minutes, but here is Brett Baer, the man who conducted the interview, talking about what happened at the very end of their discussion. And by the way, Kamala Harris and her team showed up about 20 minutes late for the interview.
Dana, you've been on the other side. You've been on the rapper as a press secretary interviewing a president. And, you know, I'm talking like 4 people waving their hands like it's got to stop. So, Martha, final, I had to dismount there at the end. There's so many things, and she maybe should do more of these. Dana, you've been on the other side. All
right. There's more. Kamala Harris was doing a rally last night from MJ Truth Ultra on X. Oh my God. Someone shouted, "Jesus is Lord," at Kamala's rally last night, and she said, well, I mean, we'll let you listen to it. The audio is not great, so you're going to have to really pay close attention. Here we go.
With the intention that they would undo the protections of Roe v. Wade, and they did as he intended. Oh, you guys are at the wrong rally.
All right. So guy yells, Jesus is Lord from the crowd. And this is Kamala's response. And listen to the crowd. I mean, I'm surprised the lightning bolt didn't come down and take them all out.
No, I think you meant to go to the smaller one down the street.
Wow.
With the intention.
Wow. 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 And again, could we expect any less from this clown? Oh, I have one more clip to play for you from Kamala Harris, and here it is.
As a woman, there's a balance to be struck between being tough and being a bitch. Turn that off.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I can't. What if she wins? Oh, man. Do you think it would be possible for us to get Elon Musk to try and colonize another planet so we could move there? Probably wouldn't be able to make it happen in the next 10 or 20 years. So people like us, we're out, but our kids might be able to go. From Speaker Mike Johnson of the House of Representatives of the United States regarding the hurricane problems that they've been having. He said, I recently traveled to North Carolina, and victims of Hurricane Helene told me nearly 2 weeks after landfall, the Biden-Harris administration had still not provided them with all the resources they desperately needed. We've been hearing stories. We've been seeing videos of this, right? For the last couple of weeks now, maybe longer. But CBS, in a show of media censorship, edited out entirely his firsthand perspective. So here is the version that aired on CBS, followed by his full answer.
So that's a different accounting than this 2% you say was distributed.
Yeah, so they've obligated some funds, but they've only distributed 2%. The rescue and recovery effort's still going on, and then we address the rest of it.
So that's a different accounting than this 2% you say was distributed.
Yeah, so they've obligated some funds.
See, he had his people video this while he was on the air, right? So it's a different sound, obviously, but it's his own people who videoed this. And obviously the reason for doing this is to make sure that they don't egregiously edit you to make you sound like you're saying something you're not saying at all. So here we go again. Like, watch.
The rescue and recovery effort's still going on, and then we address the rest of it.
So that's a different accounting than...
And then we address the rest of it. Very good edit. I'll give them credit for that. But let's move on to the unedited
this 2%
version.
you say was distributed.
Yeah, so they've obligated some funds, but they've only distributed 2%. And when I was there on the ground, and you should go, I mean, bring the cameras and talk to the people there. They'll tell you, don't take politicians' words for this or the administration's word. Talk to the people there on the ground. They had not been provided the resources almost 2 weeks out from the storm that they desperately needed. And when I was there, 13 days post the storm hitting that state, people are still being rescued. They're stuck in the higher elevations in the mountains because the roads are down and all the rest. So they need every available resource and all hands on deck. The rescue and recovery effort's still going on, and then we address the rest of it.
So that's a different accounting than this 2%.
And we address the rest of it. So everything that he said about going there and seeing for themselves had been edited out. That's absolutely astounding that they would do that. Let's stay on God for a second here, because what's happening in the UK is absolutely awful and frightening. And I do believe that, you know, the globalists are pushing this all across the Western world where they're trying to actually penalize your thoughts, and they're definitely trying to destroy Western religion. This man here was arrested 2 years ago for silent prayer and just a couple of days ago found guilty. Let's watch.
Hello, we've just received the verdict from the judge in the case of Adam Smith Connor. She has found Adam guilty for his silent prayers. This is a shocking verdict. Adam, what would you like to say on receiving this verdict?
Well, I just want to thank everyone for the support over the last 2 years. Since I was first accused of this thought crime on the 24th of November, 2022. Psalm 22 verse 10 says, "When my father and mother forsake me, then the Lord will take care of me." I served our great nation for 20 years as an Army reservist. I continue to serve my local community as a physiotherapist and a church volunteer. I never imagined that the nation I love and has been so good to me in the past could turn on me for doing nothing more than offer up a prayer for my deceased son. I felt like my government had forsaken me, but the Lord has taken care of me, surrounded me with prayer, and provided me with an excellent legal team with ADF UK. I want to thank everyone who's been praying for justice in this court case. I've received messages of support from across Britain, America, Italy, and even in Bethlehem, the birthplace of Christ. I'm extremely saddened that the judge has found me guilty. This marks a dark and dangerous day for our nation, setting a legal precedent that thought crimes can occur in England. When George Orwell wrote 1984 in the year 1948, he meant it as a warning, not as a guidebook. It seems Orwell's predictive powers were off by 40 years, but apart from that, the notion that thought crime could become established in the British legal system was sadly accurate. 2 years ago, when this case started, a Christian friend of mine said that we are now at a time where Christians can be persecuted for prayer. But there would come a time when you could be persecuted and a knock at the door could happen in your own home. Well, if you live in Scotland, that time has now come. In Scotland, the buffer zones, you can be persecuted for discussing abortion in your garden if you are overheard by someone. If you think I'm being paranoid, this is only going to happen outside abortion clinics, think again. If the government can create thought crimes somewhere, it's only a matter of time before they create them anywhere. If you hold any controversial views at odds with the government, and we all do at some level, watch out. God and God alone gives us the inalienable rights and freedoms. It's the government's job to uphold these freedoms, not to suppress them.
His name is Adam Smith Connor, and he was found guilty of silent prayer in an abortion zone. You've heard about safe zones that some politicians here in Canada have been trying to get implemented so that they can be free of harassment from people like us, from people who have questions, and when they refuse to answer questions truthfully, we can't hunt them down, or not being able to protest outside of hospitals or women's clinics or anything like that because of fear of what? Conflict, of hurt feelings? They're trying, and they do have a couple of boundaries like that, I believe, in Calgary that have been challenged in court. We don't know exactly what's happening with those cases just yet, but they are trying to establish just the same thing here in Canada. So if you stand and pray silently in an abortion zone in the UK, you're a criminal. That's the law. And it's absolutely sickening. Guys, I'm going to play you one more clip, and I've got some more stuff on Kamala Harris, not necessarily Kamala Harris more Tim Walz coming up in the extension for all access members on shadowdavis.com in just a couple of minutes. Is Tim Walz a PEDO? Rumors have been flying. Here's what Kamala Harris, and by the way, this is the kind of judgment that Kamala Harris shows when it comes to making decisions.
You have laid out policy in great detail. Yeah. But the economy is an unpredictable beast. And you are running for a job that takes extraordinary instinct and guts. Yeah. What's the last time you had to make a gut decision? This here is very prescribed. It's very controlled.
Yeah. Probably the biggest gut decision I've made most recently is to choose my running mate. Yeah.
Her gut tells her to go ahead and choose Tim Walz, who may be even though he is the governor of Minnesota, they do call him Tampon Timmy for a reason. I'm going to leave you with a censorship video, and I wanted to make sure I played this on the social media part of the show tonight because James O'Keefe has been at it again with his gang at OMG Media. That's O'Keefe Media Group. They are now focusing on Meta, which is Facebook and Instagram, even though Mark Zuckerberg has come out and said, oh, I think Donald Trump's really cool. It was the coolest thing ever when he got up from being shot and said, fight, fight, fight. Wow, man, that was awesome. We all thought that Mark Zuckerberg had somehow turned over a new leaf. And then there were reports coming out about Mark Zuckerberg's newfound political philosophy, which was not necessarily far right, but he was more of a, the word's escaping me right now. Not a Republican. Oh, never mind. It doesn't matter. This is what happens after a week off. You can't remember things. Anyway, what O'Keefe is focusing on right now is the Meta files. And so what he does, he hires attractive young women. He puts them on Bumble. And he gets a date. Somehow they get a date with some insider for Meta, some high-level engineer, whatever from Meta. And they are mic'd. They have a secret mic on, and they ask questions. And these guys just go ahead and give the answers. Now, we don't know if this guy is actually telling the complete and total truth or not, but it's definitely entertaining. Listen to what this guy says. Meta engineer Jeevan Gowali.
In Ohio said something about Kamala Harris is isn't unfit to be a president because he doesn't have a child.
Okay.
That kind of shit is automatically demoted.
Are they doing a good job protecting our democracy? Because I can see these right-wing groups setting up Instagram accounts or Facebook accounts for that matter, right? And just start posting disinformation, be like, Harris is blah, blah, blah.
That's all going to be demoted 100%. The civic classifier is strong.
Meet Jeevan Gowali, a senior software engineer at Meta. The senior software engineer also goes on to say that, quote, the person would not be notified, unquote, if they were demoted because of their anti-Kamala Harris post on Meta, and red-listed, that's a new term we just learned, red-listed.
Would the person who posted that would he be notified that?
The person would not be notified, but there's these things that what you collect is if a bunch of items that, if at least a couple of items that a person has created has violated civic classifier, then they're also red listed.
Our OMG American Swiper asked Jeevan if Meta was shadow banning users for their anti-Kamala Harris posts. Take a look at what he says.
So is that called shadow banning?
Shadow banning, yeah.
Okay, so they will be shadow banned.
Correct.
They will never be shown. But so they will see a dip in impressions and engagement,
yeah.
But they would not be officially warned of the reason why.
Correct.
We asked Gowali if Meta has the ability to affect the upcoming election, to which he responded, yes, Meta does. Jeevan also confirmed that Mark Zuckerberg intends to help the Democrats in this election cycle.
You guys have the ability to influence the outcome of the election.
Yes.
Do you think Zuckerberg agrees? Good. Is he going to help the Democrats?
There's no possible way he could know whether Zuckerberg agrees. And by the way, the term I was struggling for a couple of minutes ago, libertarian, of course. Duh. People thought that Mark Zuckerberg had turned into a libertarian over the past couple of years, but Perhaps not. I mean, not that this guy knows what Mark Zuckerberg, I mean, he's an employee. Not that he knows Zuckerberg's political tendencies, but at the same time, if Facebook and Instagram Meta are actually doing this, then no, they're not libertarian at all. They should allow all content on their platforms, all content. That's all there is to it.
Yeah.
Unless it's criminal, unless it breaks the law.
Meet Jeevan Gowali, a senior
We're not
software.
going to play the whole thing. We're not going to. You guys can find that, I think, probably on Instagram. All right. That's where I found it. That's it for the show tonight, you guys. I hope you have a fantastic weekend. Well, that's it for the social media part of the show. I'll be back on Monday night at 8 o'clock Central for another Shadow at Night live stream. The show continues on shadowdavis.com in just a second for you all access members with the extension. I'll see you in a couple of minutes. I love you all. I appreciate you all. Good night.